What's good, y'all? My name is Zach Young, and welcome back to Young Money Sports. So as I'm recording this, the draft just wrapped up, and today I was just wanting to give my thoughts on a couple select picks, and of course, like who the Miami Heat picked up in the draft, as well as some recent trade news going on with the NBA involving somewhat of a major player. I guess we'll just get into all that as the video goes on. But the first pick I want to discuss is Rob Dillingham getting picked by the San Antonio Spurs, 8th overall. You know, I follow Kentucky basketball, of course. I'm from Kentucky. So, you know, I thought Rob Dillingham would be a pretty good pickup for the Spurs. You know, I thought Reed Shepherd would have been a really good option to pair up with Wemby going into it, but unfortunately he got picked number 3 by Houston. But I think initially they still ended up with a pretty good haul, at least in those first couple of picks. I mean, they got Stephon Castle from UConn, and then at pick 8 it looked like they were going to keep Rob Dillingham, who, you know, he can bring you some good defense, good scoring, all that sort of thing. He's a really good addition to your team, especially when the Spurs are moving in more of a youthful direction. And then for some reason, I don't know why they thought this would be a good idea, but they traded him to Minnesota for, I think, a 2031 first round pick and a 2030 pick swap. Those two could be swapped around, but the point is they traded away Rob Dillingham for 2 middle schoolers. And I just don't get, especially like in a draft like the NBA draft where, you know, the best players are normally more at the top, why you would trade a guy who you would hope has like some great potential in this league and can really hope or really like build towards like something good in the future. You would trade that for two players who are, like I said, are in middle school right now. Now, personally, for Minnesota, I think this is, like I said, this is like a steal for them. You're trading away, like, of course you're like in win now mode. You're hoping that this championship window is going to stay open for a while. And I think adding a guy like Rob Dillingham is really going to help with that. It's like you're either getting some really good depth coming off the bench, or, you know, Mike Conley ain't getting any younger. I think he's about 37, around that age. So if he's really showing signs of slowing down and Rob is thriving off the bench, then you could definitely swap those two around and have an even better starting lineup. The next pick I really want to get into is just actually the pick that came right after Rob Dillingham, and that's the Memphis Grizzlies taking Zack Edy with the 9th overall pick. I mean, what in the world were they thinking, man? Like, Zack Edy, you know what's bad? When Zack Edy wasn't even there to go on stage and get the hat and everything. Like, I don't think there were any draft boards that were projecting him to go in the lottery, and there probably weren't a lot that were expecting him to go in the first round. And I know some people may ask, well, wait, isn't he the 2-time back-to-back National Player of the Year? How in the world is he not projected to go high, like, at all, or even in the first round? Well, to answer that, at least in my opinion, Zack Edy is a very traditional center. He doesn't really fit with the modern NBA game. His game is perfect for the college level, which is why he thrives so well. And, like, there's nothing wrong with being a great college player. There's a lot of admiration that comes with that, and just being a great basketball player at any level is something that you like. Nobody can really take that away from you. But to really sit up here and act like this man is just ready to be an NBA center when the biggest flaws that he has really just like will prevent him from ever really thriving in the NBA unless there's like a drastic improvement. Like, it just really shows that this pick was so baffling, man. Like, he's got no jump shot. He's slow. He will get absolutely destroyed on the pick and roll. Like, can you imagine this man going one-on-one with a guy like Steph Curry? Like, that's absolutely like a barbecue chicken alert. There's no way that this dude would even come close to being able to guard a guy like Steph Curry. In college, this man had 2 moves on offense. It was either a baby hook or a free throw. His way of scoring is something that you would see probably thriving in the NBA like 15, 20 years ago. That's why I was telling people kind of leading up to this, like, when I was watching him in the tournament, I would always say, if he was playing, like, even 20 years ago, he would be, like, the clear-cut number 1 overall pick. Like, there'd be no question about that. But in today's game, where everyone needs to be able to shoot, everyone really needs to be able to switch on defense, everyone needs to be, like, some sort of playmaking in some way, like, you can't just be a back-to-the-basket kind of guy. Like, that just slows the offense down, and the way NBA is played today, where the pace and the scoring is so much higher than it was even 10 years ago. Like, a guy like Zack Edy really, if his skill set remains the same, he will not last very long in the NBA. But I mean, hey, you know, at least he's getting some guaranteed money now. Like, I can't fault him for that. You know, go get that bag, man. It's not his fault he got picked 9th overall. It's more on the Grizzlies. But like I said, hey, go get that bag, man. And the last non-Miami Heat pick I'm going to talk about today is pick number 55 in Brony James. You know, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but I think Brony James may be related to LeBron James. Have they told you yet that this is going to be the first father-son duo in NBA history? Shit, this is the first time I'm hearing about it. I think this has to be like the most talked about 55th overall pick in NBA history. Like, I think they actually talked about Bronny longer than like the last 4 or so picks before him. Like they had a pick go by, like I think it was pick 56. They had that pick go by, and then they went to commercial, and they were still talking about Bronny when they got back. Like, they just completely ignored the rest of the draft, just continued talking about Bronny, man. It's just crazy, man. And of course, there were arguments brought on there about like nepotism and how that's been a thing forever. Don't act like it's a thing just right now. But I think what makes this even worse is just the fact that Rich Paul, Bronny, and LeBron's agent was calling teams from, I believe, pick 41 to pick 54, telling them not to take Bronny because if they did, he would go play in Australia. Like, when in NBA history would we ever see another guy who's projected to go this late have his agent calling teams telling them not to draft him? Like, at that point, you're just hoping that you would get picked up. Not you wouldn't be deferring to other teams and telling people, don't pick me. Like, you only see that really like at the very, very top. And it's in rare cases where you'll have somebody say, don't draft me. Not somebody who's near the bottom of the board and telling people not to draft him because he wants to go play with his dad. And it's crazy because they're also talking as if like Bronny and LeBron are really going to play together, when really there's no way that these two are going to be on the court at the same time unless it's like a preseason game. And if they're actually trying to win a game, I really don't think that Bronny and LeBron are going to be on the court at the same time. Like, that would just be, you'd have to be just throwing the game away, or Bronny would just have to be playing absolutely out of his mind at that point. And don't get me wrong, like I'm not actively rooting for Bronny to fail and just get kicked out immediately. I just think it's concerning to have a guy who not only, you know, he had a very shortened season last year because of the whole deal with his cardiac arrest and going to cardiac arrest, but he only averaged about 5 points and 3 rebounds playing at USC last year. He just had no time to really like grow as a player on another level. And you go from him barely playing in college basketball to just throwing him up to play against NBA players. Like, that's not a good idea, man. Like, y'all remember Zaire Wade? Yeah, I'm sure some of y'all even forgot he played in the G League for a year. And you know where he's at now? He's over in China after averaging 1 point per game in the G League in his 1 year playing. Point of all this is, like, the name is only going to get you so far. And it could honestly make the standards towards Bronny be even higher because of, you know, who his dad is. And I think he's either going to shine or he's going to fizzle out. But moving on to the Miami Heat picks, with the 15th pick, the Miami Heat picked up Khalil Ware, who's a center from Indiana. Now, overall, I think this is a pretty solid pick. You know, like, for being right out of the lottery, there aren't very many good picks remaining, and they got pretty much like the best of what you could get. I thought initially they were going to take Dalton Connect, but I'm still cool with them taking Ware. You know, he's a good 7-footer. He was an all-defensive player last year. He can shoot threes. I know he only put up like maybe 1 or 2 threes a game last year, but he still shot 40%. So, I mean, there's some room to grow there. But I think this is got to be like a win-win pick, because either he's coming off the bench and backing up Bam and hopefully giving him like a quality backup option, which Bam hasn't had really the entire time he's been a starter at center, or in which this is an option that I actually prefer, is Khalil Ware starts at center and then Bam plays power forward, so that we actually have like a tall front court for once. Having Ware and Bam out there at the same time I think would be great, because then you wouldn't have to rely on Bam being the only one that could grab rebounds or defend the paint. Like, you'd actually have somebody else who could do that while also being able to score in the paint and be an outside threat. So yeah, for as much shit as I give Pat Riley at times, I do have to admit that this was a pretty good pick. And with the 44th pick in the second round, the Miami Heat picked up Pele Larson, who is a shooting guard from Arizona. I mean, I don't really have much to say about this guy. You know, second-round picks in the NBA aren't exactly to the level of like a second-round pick in the NFL. He has some strengths in shooting and playmaking. I think he was pretty solid on the defensive end, and he could be a decent role player in the future and probably in the running for Eastern Conference Finals MVP, knowing how these players turn out for Miami. But I'm not really going to lose any sleep if this guy really doesn't turn into anything. And before I talk about the recent trade that happened with the Knicks, I just want to mention that I was completely right in my opinion about the 2-day NBA draft and how dumb that was. Because like when they actually showed like the draft room, the shit just looked really like sad. Like there was no live crowd there. They had them all just like in the first take studio while the deputy commissioner read the picks, and it was like in a tiny little cramped corner. And you had about like 6 to 12 families there, all dressed up like it was like night one. And they would interview them and do the same thing you do for the first round, but it just felt like so sad to watch, man. I felt like I was watching a hostage video half the time when they were doing these interviews. Like, I get it, you know, it's cool to let them have their moment and everything, but I feel like you would have had an equal chance of doing that if you just brought a camera to their house and showed them reacting to it like you see in the NFL sometimes. Like, that would have been better than getting them all out there, getting them all nice and dressed up, just to do the same thing you do on night one, but with nobody there and nobody watching. Like, the panel wasn't even there in the same building. They were talking in the NBA countdown area. Like, do you want to be the NFL or not? Like, you can't go halfway with this sort of thing. You either got to be all in or don't do it at all. Of course, I secretly believe that the only reason they decided to move this to 2 nights was just because they wanted more eyes to be on Bronny getting drafted and for them to be able to talk about Bronny when people aren't in bed. It wouldn't surprise me if they quietly retired this in the next 2 to 3 years. Now on to the final part of today's video. I just want to quickly talk about the Mikal Bridges trade that got done a couple days ago. So if y'all don't know, the Brooklyn Nets sent Mikal Bridges to the New York Knicks for this whole grocery list of picks here. We've got a 2025, 2027, 2029, and 2031 unprotected first-round picks, a protected 2025 first-round pick from the Bucks, an unprotected 2028 pick swap, and a 2025 Brooklyn second-round pick. Now, besides the fact that this trade has reunited like the 2016 Villanova basketball national championship team, like this trade has been pretty mixed in terms of the reception, because I can see both sides. On one hand, 4 unprotected first-round picks plus whatever else they threw in for Mikal Bridges is, on the surface, it seems insane to give up. I mean, 2027, 2029, 2031, like, you have no idea how your team is going to be by that time, and you're risking it all for a guy who he scored 20 points per game last year. He's no superstar either. But on the other hand, like, the Knicks are going all in. This is their all-in push for a championship. I mean, they just signed OG Anunoby to a $212 million extension the other day. They are not going to just get rid of this core. And I think what some people don't understand, and this is something that I have established pretty well on this channel before, is that NBA first-round draft picks are not nearly as valuable as something like an NFL first-round pick. For the Knicks, when you were trading away all those picks for Mikal Bridges, you were hoping that the team is going to be so good and so consistently good that though all of those picks are going to be near the bottom of the first round. And when you're in sort of a win-now mode, pick number 26 really isn't going to help you as much as some people may want to think. Now, obviously, you know, we have seen a trade similar to this backfire horrifically on the other side of the state. But I have like a lot more hope in this Knicks core actually succeeding and not making those draft picks all just go to the lottery, because unlike the Nets pick where they're trading all these good picks for guys who maybe have 1 or 2 good years left in the tank, you know, this core that the Knicks have right now is still pretty young. So you're not only, in theory, going to get multiple good contending championship years out of this core, but you're also going to have other good young players want to come play with this core and contend for a championship, making those later picks like the ones in 2029 and 2031 also worth less. But I don't know, I'm interested to see how this all turns out. I mean, the NBA offseason is starting soon, and I'm pretty excited for that. You know, I'm interested to see where everything goes, and you know, even though it is set in stone where LeBron's going to go, that's not the only thing that's going to happen this year. It seems like no matter what, I mean, things always get crazy around this time of year. But anyway, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and check out my video on the Cleveland Guardians in the top left corner. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch y'all later.